The Default Markups window in QuickBid is where you set up default percentages for the different markup options and enter or maintain default indirect expense entries. The Default Markups window lives in the Tools menu at the top of QuickBid. Items in the Tools menu impact every bid in the selected database. After choosing the Default Markups/Indirect Expenses option, you see a listing of all the default entries for every section in your database. If you've never set up default entries for additional sections, there's only one entry: Default Markups for all sections. Double-click the line to open the Default Markup for all sections master window. The top portion of the screen is for the markups, and the bottom for the indirect expenses. Let's start at the top and work our way down. You see 4 different markups along the left side of the window: escalation, tax, overhead, and profit. Across the top of the window, you see 5 categories: material, labor, subs, equipment, and other. Your job is to enter a basic percentage that you want to use to mark up each category. Once entered, these default markup entries automatically apply to every new bid in your database. However, don't be afraid to make an entry. Your defaults can always be adjusted on the Markup tab if a bid needs it. Escalation is a markup that usually varies from job to job. For instance, you might choose to escalate a job that you are bidding on today, but that won't start until the following year. Your material and labor prices are accurate today, but by the time the job begins, both labor and material are likely to be more expensive. Therefore, you could escalate the job by a certain percentage to cover that cost increase. The default markup for escalation is typically 0%, because you don't know what you might need to use from job to job. You primarily apply the tax markup to material and equipment, but you can also apply it to the subs and other columns. Labor is burdened and not taxed. You should enter your local sales tax amount in these columns. If the tax amount also varies from job to job, you can leave it blank, but don't forget to add it on the Markups tab. You can enter whatever percentage you like for overhead and profit. The bottom portion of the screen is where you set up default indirect expenses for stocking, cleaning, supervision, and per diem. While you can set these expenses up here, it's far easier to set them up on a bid on the Markups tab and then save those entries as defaults, which in turn updates this window. You can learn more about that process in the video The Markups tab, Indirect Expenses and Additional Markups. After reviewing that training video, if you decide you still want to use the default markup screen directly, you'll find that setting up indirect expenses here is almost identical. Click OK at the bottom of the screen to save your entries and return to the sections list. As the name implies, the default markups for all sections apply equally to all sections in the bid. However, what if you want a specific section to have different markups? For instance, think about working in an area your company performs but isn't really your specialty. You might want to automatically add a little extra overhead to work in that section just in case your estimate isn't 100% perfect. To do so, click the New button on the right side of the screen, and the Division and Section window appears. Find the section you want to add and double-click it. You now have a new section on the default markups list. Double-click it to open the default markups for that specific section. The default entries for all sections automatically pulls in to get you started, but now you can make any adjustments necessary for this new section. Once complete, any work you add to a new bid that falls into a section with its own default entries automatically uses them, while all other sections still use the default entries for all sections.